What are red flags at a restaurant? Well, I have a list for that. Unclean toilets, incoherent menu, cuisines that don't often have ingredients in common, which means some ingredients may sit longer. Someone said this to me last year, and in every single instance, it has held true. If the restaurant has any sort of smell that isn't food, don't eat there. Like a mildew carpet smell or bathrooms that smell moldy. They're annoyed that you're ordering food. The restaurant doesn't seem to exist. Don't assume that because it is on a delivery service website that it is a real restaurant. Lots of ghost kitchen restaurants. That food may be coming from an illegal kitchen. Recently, I had to inform my friend that her favorite sushi place isn't real. Oof. Order directly from the restaurant when you can. If you don't smell food at a restaurant, good chance everything is just microwave. Also, flies. If you see one fly, no big deal. If you see multiple flies, leave. No one eating there when it's actually time to eat. And when the general state of the restaurant is in poor condition, like stained walls, torn wallpapers, dirty floors, or stained furniture. Yeah, that first one, definitely. If the washroom is dirty, you know the kitchen is pretty nasty too, right? Story 2. As a former restaurant worker for a brief period, waiters, waitresses standing around together just staring because the owner told them it looks unprofessional to just relax. On the contrary, just a few of them running like crazy at peak hours because owners don't bother to hire a decent amount of people. Owners walk around with an arrogant yet anxious look, kind of showing they're the boss, kind of not showing what the heck is happening in their restaurant. When as soon as a customer empties their plate, a staff member comes in a rush to take the empty dish away. It means that owners want to take in as many customers as possible, and staff, both kitchen and saloon, is overwhelmed and cannot give a decent service. When some staff member is repairing, fixing, or installing some furniture in the dark at the end of the evening in some corner of the restaurant, it can seem that they pay attention to details and they take action as soon as needed. But it also means that owners are very greedy and they do not care to call some professional because they can do it without help and save money. Story 3. For me, one time it was hearing 4 or 5 waitresses standing in a group that I could clearly hear, arguing about which one of them was not going to take my table. I sat there for 15 minutes, and evidently all of them had won the argument because none of them came. There were like me and 2 other people in the whole place. I saw why they had no customers in that place. I got up and left. Another one, this was years ago, but once went to Buffalo Wild Wings with a friend and ordered some wings and a beer. About 40 minutes in, we both kind of said to each other, our server is ending themselves by not coming over here because we'd both have gotten another round, but now I just want to go home, implying a percentage-based tip. At the hour mark, we were trying to find just about any server possible. By an hour and a half, it just got funny to the point where we could have gone to the front of the restaurant to see what was up, but now it had become a game. By the 3-hour mark, yes, 3 freaking hours, we decided to just get up and walk out having not paid the check. Walked out, nobody stopped us, and the servers up at the front of the restaurant all waved goodbye. Older me regrets walking out on the check. I would definitely handle the situation differently now, but it's still something I look back on and laugh at sometimes. Nah, walking out was the best option. It's not their fault their server ignored them for 3 freaking hours. Story 4. When you go in and most of the guests have dirty plates on their tables and are looking around for a server, add in empty tables still piled with plates, and you know they are incredibly short-staffed, so time to bail out. This happened to me once and I bounced. Our waitress just refused to bring the bill. It was like some Uno reverse card where the goal was to not let customers pay. LOL. I could see her talking to other waitresses, never at the terminal, not even picking up cards off of other tables. Her whole section was in this weird purgatory where we were all done, willing to pay, but unable to wrangle her back. 3 random waitresses were flagged down and all said, "Let me check on it." I even went to the bar begging to pay, and the bartender said the same thing. I gave it a solid hour and then left after another table did the same. Another one would be visible signs of old neglect that translate into, if they aren't bothering to clean that up, what does that say about the kitchen? Added bonus if you bring it up and they have a rehearsed excuse like it's an in-house feature and they laugh it off. I was at this sushi place once that had a serious fruit fly problem, as in you'd sit down and they'd fly into your wine. The server wouldn't replace the wine, but they'd gladly put an open jar of sugar water or some such thing beside you as a more tantalizing distraction to keep the flies off of your food and out of your drinks. Oh, we hear that all the time. This works. Laughter. Then they disappear. Story 5. In NYC, a C or lower rating or TBD health department rating in the window. I work service, so to me, a B is no biggie. Generally, not too many horrifying issues to end up with a B, can just end up with an intense inspector. No rating means they were inspected and didn't get an A, so they are in the period where they can go to court and show they fixed things to get a better grade. So eat at your own risk. They could be a B trying to get an A or a D trying to get something, lol. But displaying a C or D takes extra effort to be incompetent. When you are inspected, you are given a chance to rectify the issues. This means nobody fixed what was wrong and we're cool with just accepting that and continuing to operate. Things they might be ignoring: bug infestations, rodent droppings, poorly documented pantry expiration dates, no when open dates on open food or drink, improper sanitation efforts, leaks, plumbing issues, etc., illegal layout and operations, or improper daily cleaning, and on and on and on. I'll pass on those places. Also, I was once somewhere with a friend and she ordered a meatloaf. They said they were out of it. Okay, no big deal. She orders something else, and 5 minutes later, they come back and say, "Hey, we found some meatloaf. Do you want that instead?" We just excused ourselves and left. I get it. Maybe there was just some miscommunication or something. But the way she said we found some meatloaf, it kind of scared us both. Lastly, if you go to a restaurant and you have a gut feeling of red flags but not sure where they are coming from, just leave. Don't bother waiting for the rest of the red flags to come. One time I went to an Indian restaurant and the first red flag was this gut instinct that said we should leave but didn't want to seem rude or paranoid. Second red flag is when they poured us wine and there the glass was obviously dirty, like some weird white floaty bits in it. They gave us a new glass and bottle, so we let that go. Third red flag was being gaslit about the menu. We tried to order the butter chicken spicy, but they kept telling us that it's not a spicy dish. Now, I've been to many Indian restaurants and never not been able to choose my own spice level, let alone not be able to make a dish spicy at all. The fourth red flag was when we saw a cockroach crawling around on the wall next to me. We noped out of there pretty fast after that. Story 6. My dad used to work in the restaurant business. We'll get back to that in a second. So one time my wife and I went to a restaurant and had a very strange experience. The place was highly rated, but we came in at an odd hour, so it was fairly slow, like 2 other tables being served out of 30 available. When the waiter comes to take our order, they have a list of specials longer than the regular menu. The strangeness starts a little after that. We notice that there's like 15 or 20 extra waitstaff, despite this being clearly a time of day that only needs a skeleton crew. And most of them are just like standing there, not hanging out or chatting like what happens at normal restaurants during a lull. They're just standing there like they're expecting some time to require their attention. But like 7 people doing that for 3 tables. Somehow, despite there being 30 damn waiters for 5 people, we have terrible service. Despite 7 people just watching stuff, no one checks in on us. Our food takes forever to come out. The waiters that are walking back and forth don't walk near or see us, so it takes us 5 minutes to flag down a manager. Some of the waiters may have had poor English as well, despite this not being an ethnic restaurant, although I may be misremembering that part. The manager promises to find out what's going on with our food. The manager brings out our food. He tells us that he found it since it was ready, but no one had brought it out. Because I guess all of the 20 waiters had more important things to do, like standing around seeing if anyone needed salt or a napkin. How can I need salt if I don't have my food yet? After some serious discussion, my wife and I conclude this must be a mafia front. All of these people must be standing around appearing to be gainfully employed for money laundering purposes. If the restaurant claims to be very busy with cash transactions during this time, the IRS will be suspicious if there aren't enough payroll taxes to support waitstaff. So they have real waitstaff. Maybe these people have extra duties on the side, but not during business hours or something. A few weeks later, my wife and I shared with my dad our story of this ridiculous restaurant. First of all, we say, the list of specials was like a mile long. That sounds like it was a front, he says. And we are flummoxed. Okay, but yes, it definitely was, but we didn't even get to the sketchy stuff. And my dad explains restaurants need a supply chain. If something's on the menu, the restaurant needs a dependable source for those ingredients. They need to have it in stock, fresh, of acceptable quality, daily. Chefs spend a lot of time and effort sourcing ingredients. A good part of the food channel is spent in markets and whatnot. If most of the menu is variable, then their supply chain is my cousin has a box of fish that he says fell off the back of a truck. Yes, halibut is on the menu today. This is a reflection of their business practices in general. He also gave me a copy of Kitchen Confidential for Christmas with the words, "It was really like this," written inside the cover. Story 7. In addition to a super large, diverse menu being a huge red flag that you're getting frozen meals run through the microwave, watch for no substitutions. If the place makes its own food, they can sub virtually anything for anything else. While they may try to play it up as our food is perfect and we refuse to change it on moral grounds, it's almost always a sign of this was made 2 months ago and all we do is reheat it. This can go either way. What I was saying can be correct, but there's more to it. I used to work at a place that had no substitutions, but they made everything to order and as close to from scratch as possible. So, why did they have the policy? Because during the rush, people would come in and sub something so much that it wasn't even a menu item anymore. They would throw off food costs sometimes and make tickets drag out of the kitchen a lot. You know what makes people complain about more than anything else? Slow food on their lunch break. It got to be so bad that the owners, who owned a number of restaurants, bailed on it and sold the place. I was briefly part of management there before it closed and got a good look at the books, and they were in the black. The hassle of dealing with the picky yuppies at the location wasn't worth the amount of profit for them. They were in the black, but they weren't deep in the black. Something I was told months later when I ran into one of them and asked why they'd sell a profitable business. Well, yeah, but just because something is a red flag doesn't mean anything is actually wrong. It's just, hey, you should really look closer at this kind of warning. Anyway, since you're already halfway through the video, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Story 8. More than 2 of the waitstaff are crying. Out of all the years I was in the industry, my coworkers never made me cry, nor did the environment. It was always the guests and patrons that did because some people are just absolutely horrible. The worst of them were from those new money areas, the kind where the men would have meetings at the restaurant during the day, so dressed in suits doing big, important man business, bring their families in at night with their disrespectful 13-year-olds, and then bring their dancers and one casual in on the weekends and on something. They were horrible to the waitstaff. The second horrible were the Jewish wives, and this is not me just hating on Jewish people or passing judgment. Now, this was from a specific area of where I lived and worked where it was predominantly Jewish who frequented the establishments I worked at. Those women were just so mean and harsh to the waitstaff. They lied and they played a lot of games. The Greek wives came second. They were also mean and harsh, but they weren't liars the way the Jewish wives were. They legitimately made me feel less than and, yes, left me in tears more times than I can count. I suppose it was because they knew their money wasn't that flush and that their husbands were cheaters. I don't know. But being in that atmosphere, surrounded by that all the time, made me feel like I was in the Twilight Zone. Leaving that area after working in it so long drastically helped my mental health. Again, it was a specific area where everyone kinda acted the same. Not all businessmen, not all Jewish and Greek women are like this. It's an isolated location with a cutthroat type of nature with hustle-bustle culture. Now, the third worst were the people coming in from Brooklyn. They'd often come in 10 minutes to last call, milk clock, share portions, stiff you on the tip, and then act like they gave you a huge one. All the while treating you like you are less than. They expect top-notch service and give nothing in return. Also depends on the type of people from Brooklyn. I'm not talking about the young people with band tees, shaved heads, and gender-neutral types of kind of folks. I'm talking about the ones who have apartments in Brooklyn and businesses elsewhere, show up with their heavy platinum credit cards, make snide remarks on your physical appearance, and act all important. Oof, they were harsh on the tongue. On the flip side, the nicest people were those from out of state stopping by during their travels, maybe staying in the area on a business trip. I've met some of the loveliest and friendliest bunch, best tippers, kindest demeanors, and always have the nicest thing to say, as well as being reasonably maintained. Story 9. Ask my mom, who was a chef for 30 years. This is what she told me. You're better off sticking to restaurants you know are good if you can. Find a place you know is doing things right and give them your business. But if you need to find a new place, like if you just move cities or something, order a food you know pretty well. For me, that's always a soup. Now, my mom did soups for a good chunk of her time as a chef. If it's something you know really well, then you'll know if it's good or not. And if they do that well, then the rest of the food should probably be all right too. But if something's wrong with your order, like it's too salty or undercooked or whatever, then there's something wrong with the restaurant. She also said that while a low price isn't indicative of a terrible restaurant, be wary of places that price too high or low for the type of food they serve. A burger place shouldn't cost you more than $15 for a meal, and even then, that's being generous. And if your fine dining experience is running less than $10 a plate, something is wrong. All right, I get that because rice and beans is my gauge for Mexican food. If the rice and beans aren't good, then the place isn't good either. Story 10. Cook for 21 years, chef for about 10. I like a lot of these, but not all. While I am in no way a complete expert and know it all, this is my take on just a few things. First, a large menu does not always mean frozen. We have a general rule of thumb where I am. If a prepped item can be used on 3 separate dishes, it can stay. The largest issue that can really happen here is you become a restaurant of all foods, the master of none. Smaller menu is more ideal, mostly for taste quality and specialization. Second, not doing substitutions. This can also simply be a product of the restaurant being in an area where demands that are unrealistic are common or can drag down the speed of the kitchen. When I am in the middle of a 400-person dinner and have substitutions all willy-nilly, we don't get food out on time. Kitchen is too small for the amount of food that I do. Third, Anthony Bourdain was a saint and one of my favorite people ever, but his op-ed was very outdated. He even said himself, I believe, that he may not have been in the correct frame of mind when writing it. I don't want to waste food, and I will try and sell food as often as I can. What I won't, and most self-respecting chefs as well won't do, is serve anything that can even be questionable. I refuse to get anyone sick for selfish reasons. It would bruise my ego, and also when I get fired, I won't get another job. Fourth, dirty chef coat or apron does not mean messy cook or chef. It means hard working chef. I look like a butchered cow after a shift, but I also know I'm clean enough where you could eat off my cutting board. Almost all restaurants are going to have bugs to a small degree. It's what they are doing about it that's the issue. If the restaurant that you can actually see is dirty, that's a big damn problem. While I don't agree that a dirty front of house automatically means dirty back of house, usually different management heads, the chef runs the back, it doesn't look good in terms of morale and energy and staffing, and it's just freaking disgusting. Clean it up if you have bug issues and do it yesterday. I might add more to this, but please give small restaurants a chance. Sometimes they will have a large menu just to compete with the big guy next door. It stinks out loud. Story 11. Former barista and assistant manager here. If the restaurant has a coffee machine visible, take a look at the steamer. If it's covered in white, it means they don't clean after frothing the milk. Most likely, they don't run steam after heating up the milk, meaning that there is residual milk inside the nozzle of the steamer, which gets burnt and generates bacteria. Don't order coffee there. Also, most likely the cloth used to clean the steamer from time to time is disgusting and used for more than just wiping the milk out of it. A restaurant with a good philosophy about health and safety cleans the coffee machine every night. Now, the reason that you need to clean the steam wand after each use is that the milk dries on it very quickly after the frothing process, and dried milk is incredibly hard to remove once caked on. Caked on milk will build up and within a couple of hours will begin to harbor bacteria that in turn gets injected into the fresh milk as it is steamed. In addition to this, many places reheat milk, which is like begging for bacterias. Any food substance exposed to the environment at the proper temperature will grow microbes, even in the cleanest kitchen. Steaming can be used to sterilize, but if after steaming the milk just sits there, it does the opposite effect. I can't encourage you guys enough to be careful. Story 12. You might have to be a chef to recognize this, but my red flag is going into a busy restaurant and noticing none of the tables have food or not many customers are yet to eat. This usually means the kitchen is going down in flames. One time I noticed this and could see some food slowly stacking up in the window, but no orders coming out. I mentioned it to the server and he replied, I wouldn't suggest ordering food. He brought our drink check and we left. He was tipped pretty well for his honesty. The other day we went to a restaurant a little after noon and it was packed with the lunch rush. My husband suggested maybe we get fast food, but I looked around and said everything was going to be fine because 80% of the tables already had food or a check. This reaction surprised him because he's used to me seeing a crowded restaurant and saying nope and turning around. He doesn't understand what I'm looking for, which is a sign that the servers have it under control or are in the weeds. All right, looks like the final story gave me the biggest lesson of all. I'm definitely going to have to start doing this whenever I walk into a busy restaurant. And if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video, and big thanks for hanging out with me on this one.